Hi, I'm Natalie and we are going to be sewing the Schoolhouse Tunic. I am going to be using flannel. This is Mammoth Flannel from Robert Kaufman and I've already pre-washed it. So whenever you make a garment, you do want to pre-wash and dry however you normally do your laundry, just to knock out any shrinkage of the fabric. So I have already cut out my pattern pieces for this pattern, and I'm going to start with the tunic style, which as you can see it's a little longer. So the skirt pieces, we have one front, one back, and they are cut on the fold. So I'm going to take you overhead and we're going to get this cut out. All right, let's go overhead and I'm going to do my last cuts. This is the sleeve.
Zoom out.
Yep. So you don't want to move your fabric around a lot when you're working with plaid like I just did. Use my Zen blocks. Okay, let's try this again. All right, and then these little notches, you want to make sure that you are snipping the notches because one side has one notch and the other has two, and that is important and it will matter later. So now, where did I put those are my clips. Here are my scissors. So these it's just a little tiny snip so that you can find it later, and then you want to do the center snip and then the snip over here. This is one. And you know what? I should have had the other one under there at the same time, but I didn't. Did I cut this one out? Also, when you're cutting your sleeves, oh, this is really hard to tell. Right side from wrong side. There's no way I'm going to ever be able to tell that. Now, if you were working with a corduroy and it was corduroy here and let's say white back here or something like that, you would want to cut out your sleeves right sides together so that you had a mirror image of the fabric cut out correctly. Does that make sense? Because on this shoulder, the two notches will be back here, one notch up here, and you want the same, one notch up here, two back here. Don't do what I've done before and sew on one sleeve backwards. I think we all do that as beginners, but the longer arm scythe curve is usually the back one, I think. I'm not claiming to be an expert. I just do what I do. Okay. I'm going to make sure these are notched. And then we're going to get into it. All right, so you should have two sleeves. You should have two bodice front pieces. Now I did a little workaround here. I cut this on the fold with the intention that then I'm going to come back and chop that down. See how that's there? It's just easier for me to cut that way so that my plaids are all lined up properly. So I cut it on the fold and then I split it because this one is not, the front bodice is two separate pieces. And let me show you this. You know what? Before I mess it up, let me do my notches. See the notches here? You've got one here. You've got one up here. You've got one down here. And you've got one down here. And then you've got a bunch here, and that's for closure. I'm not going to bother with that right now. So here are the front bodice pieces. Okay, so I'm going to lay them right sides up and put a pin through here so that when I go to sew these, they are ready to go. Okay, and then we've got the back bodies. This one, place on fold lines. So this one is all one piece. I'm going to mark my notches now. And let me show you this. It's one piece. Okay. Here is the back skirt, cut one on fold, and we've got a notch down here, and we've got a notch up here. I'm going to remove this and show you the full piece. Okay, so there is the back skirt piece. I'm not going to worry about the hem too much in case you saw like my hem not being the plaid perfectly straight across, because hem is last. And I always tidy up things at the end when it comes to the hem. I don't worry about it. I can fix it on the fold. Then we have cut 2 plackets. So I cut these and I'm just going to notch them really quick. Looks like a notch right here. That looks like the only one. I'm going to put a pin. 2 placket pieces. And then the front skirt, which is cut on the fold. And I'm just going to make sure that I have my notches correct. These are for the pleats. Might need to sharpen my scissors. Okay, so there we are. All the pieces are now cut out. Now for this tutorial, I'm going to be working with a sewing machine. Normally at home, I would probably use my serger to sew this because it would just make it very, very fast. So if you have a serger, you can definitely do that. I just don't want to leave people out who don't have one yet. So, and this pattern is sewing machine friendly. Are you okay, Squeaky Shoes? Okay, so there we are. We have all that done. Now we are on the first step. So I already did number 1. I already cut out my pieces. Now we are going to assemble the body's front. This comes together really quickly, but I will have to reference it as I don't have this pattern memorized. By the way, we have the paper pattern in the shop at SewHungryHippie.com. You can also get the PDF from SewLiberated.com. Okay, place a body's front. Let me situate all my pieces now. We need our plackets. That's the back, and here's the body's front. Okay, I'm going to move these other pieces so that they are out of the way. Usually when I'm at home, I will, sweep and mop my floor real quick and then place all my garment pieces on the floor so that everything is spread out and I can really see where things are. You don't want to get confused when sewing garments. Let's go overhead. I'm going to remove these. Yes, please. See, these are my little front bodice pieces. And we're going to be sewing right sides together, 1 placket to each side. And this encloses the seams and makes it finish really nicely. And I'm not going to get too hairy about which side is right sides or wrong sides. This flannel looks nice to me on either side, so I'm just going to carry on. I'm not going to waste my time with that. You can always take a chalk or a marking pen and mark it when it's still on the bolt, or you just get it home and you definitely, anyways, who cares? I'm tired. So we are going to sew from here all the way down. Needle down, lift your presser foot and pivot. I'm using Gutermann all-purpose thread like usual. Now I'm going to do the same to this side. I should have used pins. That one shifted a little bit. There we go. All right, let's take it back overhead. Trim these corners so that when we poke this out, we have a really nice crisp corner. And you can always trim down your seams a bit. Sometimes it can help it lay flatter and nicer, especially in cases of thicker fabrics like a flannel. Okay, so let's turn this to the wrong sides. And we're going to use our point and press tool and poke that corner out nice and sharp. Okay, and I'll press that, and I'll press that. Now, same for this side. And let's take this to my pressing table. You can check the fabric manufacturer, what they say to use as far as temperature setting. With this Mammoth Flannel, I just use high heat. That's what I do. I've never had a problem. Okay, that one looks nice. Pressing really does matter when it comes to garment sewing. Really important. Okay. I didn't press that one right. Okay. Let's see what the next step is. Attach bias binding. Oh, I forgot to cut my bias binding. It's okay, quick solve. We can do it real quick. I'm going to lay these front body pieces over here on my little pile there. Now, let me take out, we don't need very much for bias. It is on a neck curve though, so I'm going to cut it on the bias, which is not what I typically do for other projects like bags. You don't need it on the bias. This piece is for the back of the neck. I'm going to cut mine out at 2 inches, and I'm just kind of winging it. Okay, I set it up, do a 45-degree angle. Usually your cutting mat will have a 45-degree angle. Mine's off camera, so I'm just going to do it right here. I'm going to cut. And then this 2.5 inch ruler, I'm going to scooch it over so that I'm cutting 2 inches. And then we're going to fold that at like double fold binding, like this, and then like this. That's how I like to do my binding. Let me see if that's going to be a long enough piece. Yeah, it is. All right, so I'm going to take it to the iron. We're going to now attach that back neck binding. So I'm going to go like this. See how it's going to curve around like this? You could also use the pre-made if you want. I can move that down a bit. I'm going to just put a pin here and sew it on. Let's go to the sewing machine. So I'm sewing in that first ditch, and I'm lining up those edges so they're together. You don't want to pull your garment. You're only pulling slightly on the bias tape, not on the, or the binding, not on the garment itself. Just do the best you can do. Okay, now I'm going to take the pin out and wrap it around. Now, you can trim down some of that seam allowance in there if you want to. Ooh, I don't want that in the camera. You can trim that down if you want to. I'm not going to bother with it. This looks good to me. Oop, let me get this over. Okay, there's our neckline. That looks sharp. Let's take it back overhead. There we are. Okay. So now we're going all the way to number 4, where we sew the body's fronts and the body's backs at the shoulder. So here's the back. Now we need to make sure that we're laying the body's fronts right sides together. So the placket should be facing you. And that seam will end right there, I believe. Let me check this. So the placket comes up here a little ways. Get this one. Pinning these in place. This seam gets sewn with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So let's take this to the machine. Okay, let's do this side. Now we'll take it back to the table. Now these seams at home I would serge, but since I don't have a serger, let's pretend, let's just pink those edges. We have Kai pinking shears in the shop if you need them. This is an absolutely fine way to treat your edges. It reduces fraying. Okay. So now we fold the raw edges of the placket under, and we're going to top stitch those down, and it will show through to the front. It's a pretty effect or treatment, and it's so simple. Sometimes simplicity is just the answer. Okay, so here's this one. So I'm going to fold down that top edge. Oops, sorry. Let's get this. Here's the placket. I'm folding under that top edge, and I'm going to use pins to hold that down for me. And then I turn it so I can work with this edge more easily. And I'm just folding that under by 1/4 of an inch and pinning it. Now, one thing, you only want to be pinning the front of your clothing item. It looks like I grabbed the back. I was overzealously pinning. So, front is separate from the back. Let me see if I did that over here. I probably did. And you can use however many pins you need to. You can pin any which way you want to. Doesn't matter. Everyone has their own method and technique, but you can do what is most comfortable for you. All right, now we've got those raw edges tucked, and we're going to sew across here and down. Sew across and down. And that will give us that detail on the front on each side of the bodies that you might be able to see. Yeah, it's really hard to see on the cover. Let's take it to the machine. Remember, you can use a matching thread. You want to separate that front away from the back here. I don't sew over pins. Don't pull, don't push. Let the feed dogs do all the work. Okay, I'm going to do the other side. That one came untucked a little bit, so I'm going to tuck it while I'm lifting my foot. And I'm pivoting, turning the garment. If you're right-handed, it can be easiest to pin like this so that you can just grab the head of the pin really easily. But don't get caught up in that. It's nothing to really worry about. You can just as easily pull them out over here. Okay, so in number 5, she does hand stitching of that top shoulder seam to the placket. I don't mess with that, and I never have, and nobody has ever noticed. So I just want to remind you of that. Also, I'm going to take you overhead so that I can show you this part. Originally, this was up one level, and we put it down, we fold it back down, and we do another thing of top stitching. Now that can be incorporated at the same time that you top stitch this whole area and down, okay? But for me right now, I'm going to start here, go up and end there, and then I'll start over here and carry it over and down. So that's what I'm going to go to the machine and do right now. Make sure that this is fully pressed, by the way, before you start top stitching. Okay. I'm going to leave my needle down, lift my foot, and pivot. And because I already did that sewing, this is where I'm going to end. Take it out. Oops. And then I'm going to start from the other side. I'm just going to pick up that pin before I forget. I should really have my tomato over here. Needle down, lift your foot, and pivot. And here I am joining where I did that binding, so I can stop. And you really cannot see the stitching very much, so don't get super bent out of shape about perfection in stitching. Just get this done. And then the second and third one you do, you can worry about perfection if you want to. Okay, let's put these pins over here. And now we're going all the way to number 6, where we attach the sleeves to the bodice. All we do is attach the sleeves and the skirt, and we're finished pretty much. I won't take you through hemming because y'all can handle that. All right, let's grab our sleeves. You're gonna match your notches. So on your garment, it sometimes you have to play Where's Waldo. But if you're in a pinch, you can always grab your tissue pattern piece and find them easily again. So I'm gonna lay this here. Looks like that's a 1 notch. And this is a 1 notch. So I'm going to put a pin there. And then the center notch is going to go with the center seam. There it is. And I do my pins here sideways because that's how it works best for me. And then my other 2 notches are down here. And I'm going to match them to the notches here. There they are. Okay, so it looks like I maybe cut that. Oh yeah, I did. That was tucked under. See how I cut that? It was supposed to be like that. And I see already what I did. I didn't cut that straight. So this is where it's going to end, which is right. And I need to trim that because that was folded under and didn't get cut properly. Okay. So now on this space in between, because this is a curve, it's going to feel a little weird, but you're going to do some easing as you take it to your machine. Okay, this is looking good. Here we go. I'm going to take it to the machine. A little bit bigger seam allowance on this, and the curve just starts to behave. You have to stop every now and then and make sure your layers underneath are behaving and everything is matching up. That's okay. I generally leave my pins in. That's why I pin them sideways so that I'm never sewing over them. It's just what works for me. You might have a different technique and that's totally fine. These two I'm going to take out because this portion, I'll match those notches, but I have to ease it a bit. So it's a little finesse. And there it is, it's attached. Let's take it overhead. Before anything, take out your pins. You can serge that if you want, or you can bring your pinking shears in. The pinking shears help notch that curve as well, so it'll sit a little more nicely than if you skip this altogether. Just be sure you're not cutting any other layers of fabric. Just that sleeve seam, shoulder seam. I always come back and make sure that I got everything. Yep, awesome. It's attached. Let's do the other side. Right side's up, facing me. And this one I had a harder time seeing the notches. Okay, I see a double notch here. So my double notch is going to be down here. Yep, there it is. Sometimes that's just how it is. Just pick up a different piece and then magically everything works out. So pinning at first is a little bit, you know, not perfect, but we get it there. Now I'm going to find that, there it is, the centering notch, and I put it right on that shoulder seam. And then I scooch all this around and I find that single notch, and there's my other single notch. Match that up. And then hopefully, yep, that's pretty darn close. I'm not mad about less than 1/4 of an inch, not at all. So I'm going to pin that. And then I'll come back in here and kind of ease this a smidge. There we go. And then this side. There it goes. And the reason I do so many pins is because so many times in the past this has scooted down like that and then I miss sewing the whole seam. So do use your pins on this. It's worth it. Okay, let's sew this at the machine. I'm feeling to make sure that the layers are flat underneath. I'm not catching any of the bodice or any other things I shouldn't be catching. And let's go back overhead. Okay, and then I'm going to lay it flat again and carefully trim this edge with my pinking shears. All right, that sleeve, let's check the seam. Looks good. So it's already starting to come together. Here's the top portion. Now we just have to add the tunic or the skirt part. You could even make it longer if you wanted an actual skirt. I've made this into a dress very easily by just extending that tunic portion. So now we are on number 7. Let's sew this all together. So you're going to turn it right sides out so that you're looking at the seams. This is very easy. Don't overcomplicate it. Just bring the middle to the middle. We're matching this with this seam. So the underarm seam with the top arm seam. And we're going to place a pin. And then this side with this side. See this here? I put a pin there. It helps. Actually, I go this way. And then match up this sleeve. Don't worry about your plaid stripes. You can if you want to. Mine are already matching up pretty well because I cut that, you know, the sleeve is just one piece. You can match this up as best you can, but don't let it stop you if you're getting hung up. Oh, my plaids aren't matching perfectly. Who cares? Nobody's going to look at your underarm seam, I'm so sure. Okay, match this one with this one. And I do that pin first, always. Then I go down the side. And then I'm going to match this sleeve. This is all right sides together. See the seam here? Right sides together. Flannel is so easy to work with. Okay, so now we are going to sew from here all the way down. And then from here and all the way down. Let's do it. You can flatten this seam. I'm going to take those pins out now so that I don't hurt myself. All right, let's do the other side. Okay, let's take it back overhead. Come in here with your pinking shears and trim this seam. If you have a serger, you could serge that whole seam instead. Oh. All right, so let's turn this right sides out. And now if you want to, you can try it on. It's like a little bolero. Oh yeah, that's going to be cute. I'm backwards from how I feel. There. Oh, that's going to be really cute. All right, let's add the skirt pieces. So this will be, okay, so this is now number 8. We have to baste our pleats in place. So this one is the back, so I don't need that just yet. I'm going to move that out of the way. So here's the fold, and here are the pleat notches. And what we do, there are those 3 notches. We take this pleat to the center and pin, and this pleat to the middle and pin. And there's our pleat. And we're going to sew over that. So now these 3 over here, this one goes to center and this one goes to center. So fold it over and pin. Take this one, fold it to the center and pin. Now let's sew over those to hold those in place. Let's go to the machine. You can baste. I usually just leave it a sewn stitch. I'm afraid I'll forget to turn it from basting back to normal. So I just sew it. Okay. That'll get sewn again, so you really don't have to lock stitch either if you don't want to. Sometimes habits are just habits. Okay, let's go forward. So there is our front pleats. I'm going to move my pattern piece. Press the pleat flat for at least, yeah, so we want those to sit in place. So then we got to bring it over to the iron. I kind of shake mine out a bit. So the natural folds of the pleats, they want to sit a certain way. So I just kind of let it do that and then set my iron on there for a second. Done. Now that'll behave. So now this one, let's see how she wants to behave here. Okay, looks good. Set the iron down. All right. Now let's do the box pleat on the middle of the back of the skirt. So we have some notches back here and the center. And so you're going to do the same exact thing that we did on the front. Put a pin. Here's this pleat. And there we are. Let's see. Make sure this is sitting right. Okay, there we go. Okay, so there's my box pleat. I'm gonna sew over it and then press as well. Let's go to the iron. All right. Okay. Now we're almost there. Let me just check the directions really quick so I don't go off-road. Yep, we're going to place these skirt pieces right sides together and then pin along the sides, and we're going to sew the sides. So Just make sure that your nice looking pleats are facing one another, right sides together. I'm going to throw a few pins in here so I don't lose track. These notches should be lining up as well. Let's go to this side. There's my notch, there's a notch. There's that. There's that. Okay, now if you have a serger, you can just serge this. And if you're with me doing the sewing machine, let's take it to the sewing machine and sew this. Take out all the pins and use your pinking shears to trim that seam allowance so that it doesn't fray as much. You could also do a zigzag stitch. My machine is just a straight stitch, so that is another reason I'm using pinking shears. If I had my Bernina 1008 out, I could just zigzag this seam, and that would be okay too. Your machine might have an overlock stitch or a cover stitch or something. Might be fun to play with. See what, get out that manual and see if you have any fancy stuff like that. If you want to play with flat fell seams or French seams, you could also do that. All right, so our skirt is still wrong sides out at the moment. Let's see how we put it together with the bodice. Turn the bodice inside out and place it upside down. Okay. So they want me to switch. They want the skirt right sides out. Okay, all right, fine. And they want the bodice inside out, and I was going to do it opposite. So let me turn my bodice inside out. Oh, and I think I'm supposed to sew the bodice. I think I skipped that part. Maybe I didn't. Okay. Place it upside down on your working space. Okay. Bear with me a second. Okay, so let's make it like this. Everything is good. The skirt is right sides out. Now you want to make sure the skirt front is the one with the two pleats. So that has to go to the front, which is the one with the split of the tunic. So I'm going to open the bodice a little bit because it's easier to get the skirt matched up in here. I'm going to take the side seam of the skirt and match it to the side seam of the bodice, and I nest the seams. So one seam is going this way and one seam is going this way. And I'm going to grab those seams as I pin to make sure that they stay that way. Then I'm going to travel over here to this side seam and this skirt side seam and do the same thing. Nest those seams. Then I'm going to go to center. Let's see here. Line this up as well as I can. I'll throw some pins in here. Sometimes I have to move these around a little bit because this is a circle that we're sewing. And I'm okay with that. Like, let me just try to get it here the first time. I always put a few pins in that placket, the box pleat area. Okay, now we're coming around to the front, and I can bring the bodies back over. And there, it's going to match really nicely, actually. I'm going to make sure this one is down, and then I'll do this one. And you don't want space. Okay, these should be touching. So let's see if I did this right. If at this point you need to make your pleats bigger or something, if something isn't jiving here, just go ahead and fix it. It's not the end of the world. Better to fix now. See that inch of gap? So I have pinned something incorrectly here. Let me get this. There we go. There, wonderful. So then these are touching down here, and I always like to do a vertical pin here as well to keep these in place. Okay, it's pinned all around. I'm going to start here, go all the way around and finish here. And I'll tack over that a few times too, just to make sure that that stays in place. Here we go. I stop and I kind of rearrange that fabric. And there I am, back at the beginning. Let's go overhead. Take all your pins out now because you don't want to try this on and stab yourself. Some might be on the inside. Oh, and look at that. I see I messed that little thing up. Let me fix that before we... Let me grab my scalpel. Sometimes layers shift a little bit, so it's worth a check before you move forward. Because, let's see here, now where was that? Right here. This little layer underneath as I was sewing got crunched. So I need to fix that. Okay, so this got crunched. I'm just going to unpick it. There. So we're almost done. I'm just going to fix that little part that got bow-guarded when I put that through the machine. And then what you'll do is the same thing we did for the other seams. You'll either zigzag it or pink it. So I may even take this home and hit that seam with my serger at home so that I can finish this for you. So the remaining steps are making a sleeve casing if you want that elastic seam. That bugs me. I never do that. So you can skip that if you want. And the last thing is to hem. And I know you guys can hem. So I'm going to leave you to it. What I usually do here is sew 1/4 inch all the way around in a basting stitch. You know what? I should just show them, right? It's such a good hack.
Yeah.
I'll show them like 6 inches
Yeah,
of it.
direct.
Yeah, I'm going to show you my little hack. And it's not mine, like I learned it from a pattern somewhere. I don't remember who. So I'm going to take you to the machine. And what I do is I turn my machine to a basting stitch. And I sew all the way around the hem. Like this. Okay? All the way around. And then I take this to the iron. Let me show you at the iron. And I use that baseline as my guide for folding the fabric up. It works perfectly. And then I fold it again and press. And there's my double fold hem, and you can just sew all the way around the garment. Now, if you wanted a bigger hem, like just want that chunky hem look, which is nice, you can just take your little seam guide tool, this little doohickey. I'm going to take you overhead. And what I like to do is I'll still do this part, but then I make my seam guide, like let's pretend I want a 2-inch chunky hem. So I'll fold it, and then I do this all the way around, and I take a ton of pins and I pin it. And I move this guy down and I make sure that this is 2 inches. See how that arm is flared, that orange thing is flared out? So then you know your hem is perfect all the way across. So these are worth it. These are just a couple bucks at most stores. And yeah, there you go. There is your flannel schoolhouse tunic. It's so much easier than I bet you thought, huh? This is super cute with like a white tank top or a white t-shirt underneath and jeans. Think of it. I think I'll put this on tomorrow, Ramel, and do a little fashion show of some sort. Want me to put it on now? Let's try it.
Okay.
Can you see it? What do you think?